So we will get to those just shortly. Madam Clerk, please call the
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyda?
Here.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here. If the clerk would please handle the invocation and the command staff for Troop 93. Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord, as we gather with family and friends this Thanksgiving, we are reminded of what's really important in our lives. Help us to hold on to that reality when we find ourselves getting caught up in worldly things. We thank you for our freedom and for the many who have sacrificed so much to protect it. We pray for those who are traveling over the holidays that they may return home safely. We ask your blessings upon each and every one here tonight. May your peace be with us all this Thanksgiving. In your name we pray. Amen.
Attention, salute, flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, before you leave, any of y'all be identified as one of Bob's boys? Who? All of you are Bob's boys. I am too, one of Bob's boys. Great heritage to work with. Good luck. Everybody should have a copy of the minutes, so I'll take a motion.
Move for approval without reading?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay, the ayes have it. In the reports section, Dr. Middlebrooks, appointment to the library board.
Yes, sir. Mr. Smith, I have two appointments to the library board that I'd like to vote on. First, I'd like to nominate Sharon Nita Reese to the board. I'd like to have a second.
Second. Motion in 2 seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay, the ayes have it. Dr. Middlebrooks.
The next appointment would be Philip Hutchison. Nominate Philip Hutchison to the library board for 4 years.
Second.
Comment period. I didn't know Phil could read. I've known him for a very long time. When he was one of the city attorneys, we had to get his picture. Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations to both of you.
Mr. President, if you don't mind, if I could have them and their families come down for a quick picture with the council. Ms. Reese Sharonita has her husband Ronald, daughter Nehemiah, and son Ronald Michael. And Mr. Hutchinson has his wife Kathy with him. Y'all can come down and take a quick picture, please.
Haven't quite gained the respect in order to do that.
1, 2, 3.
Once again, congratulations. I have an announcement. Our work session on November 29th for our December 3rd meeting, we're going to move that from 5 o'clock to 4 o'clock because at 5 o'clock we have the annual tree lighting. So anybody that would like to come for food and merriment, maybe sit on Santa's knee, Mr. Fuller. So with that out of the way, any other reports? Hearing none, Now to the consent agenda, we've got 9 items. They will be voted as one unless any member wants to have any pulled, and then it will be placed at the bottom of the regular order, and then will be taken up on its own. If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Corley?
Resolution number 5918 amends budget for fiscal year ending September 30, 2018. Resolution number 590118 regarding bid number 18-015 for Hoover River-based Greenway Trailhead. Resolution number 5818 authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with AlDOT regarding transportation alternative program project for Hoover Cement Complex sidewalk. Resolution 590218 authorizing the mayor to execute a traffic signal modification maintenance agreement with AlDOT for U.S. Highway 31 and Theodora Drive intersection. Resolution number 590318 authorizes the mayor to execute a preliminary engineering agreement with AlDOT for Phase 2 lighting system for the Patton Chapel Road project. Resolution number 590418 authorizes the mayor to execute a construction engineering services agreement with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood Inc. for resourcing intersection improvements on City Creek Parkway and Rock's Gap and Martin Lane. Resolution number 590518 authorizes the mayor or his designated to execute a standard lease agreement with the CAT Architecture and Design regarding electronic data for the fire station on the 10 project. Resolution number 590618 authorizes the mayor or his designated to execute an add-on quote with Superion for development support. Resolution number 590718 is a vacation of Shades Avenue right-of-way located between 2233 2237 Pine Lane, 10 feet of unopened alley located on the east side of said properties at the request of the property owners. C&Z case number S-1178-39.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Before I get on to the regular agenda, I want to recognize a few people. We have Craig Kelly from the Board of Education. We have Jody Patterson, former council member from, I think, 2000 to 2004, including a triple or quadruple bypass. All of the above. And new state representative, David Whitman. Congratulations. To the regular order, Mr. Corley, resolution 587818.
Invitations to bid for janitorial and cleaning services, bid number 18-004, were sent to 75 vendors listed on the City of Hoover vendor list. The invitation to bid was also posted on the City of Hoover website. Bids were opened on Thursday, August 30th, 2018 at 10:10 a.m. 7 bids were received. Eagle Cleaning Service, Inc. was the lowest responsible bidder, meeting all specifications and requirements, with a bid of $515,935.02. This resolution would accept this bid and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with the bidder for the work to be performed.
Mr. President, we discussed at work session Thursday night. I'm going to move that these, resolution number 587818, reject all bidders and rebid.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing here none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 8, discuss proposed resolution to be considered at the December 3rd city council meeting regarding police overtime. Mr. Mayor, is that you or Ms. Rice? Thank you, sir.
Yes, as we talked about Thursday, several administrations back, police officers were put on a schedule that although they work 40 hours a week, they're not paid overtime until they work after. They're not paid time and a half until after they work 43 hours. So in some discussions that we've been having over the past month or so, that came up as to why our police officers are not paid time and a half after 40 hours, just like the rest of our employees that are 40 hours employees. So we're proposing to make that offer to our police officers to have them be able to receive time and a half after 40 hours. Again, that will put them on equal level with what we're doing with all of our other employees at 40 hours. certainly put more money in their pocket, and it will also allow them to reach their retirement cap soon. So we're making that proposal. I talked to Chief Burgess today. They are still working some numbers. I think you guys want to work some numbers and make sure it's good for them, but it's out there, and there are a number of cities that are doing that. Homewood is paying after 40 hours. Birmingham is paying after 40 hours. And Jefferson County is paying after 40 hours. So those are three departments that are doing that, and I'll give you this list as well. There's a number that are probably paying the same way we're doing now, making them reach that 43-hour cap. So anyhow, that's out there for discussion, and we look forward to seeing which side of fence that needs to pop.
Mayor, what was the catalyst that caused the administration to look at the change?
When we were, we've been in some discussions, over the change in retirement, and police officers brought up to us as to why they had to work 43 hours before they got time and a half, and everybody else was working 40 hours. So seeing that this was the fair thing to offer, but we wanted to make sure that that the police department felt that was fair, make sure that the council had an opportunity to look at it. And then also, if it is changed to 40 hours, we don't want, this is something that a mayor changed 3 or 4 administrations back, and he had complete right to do so, we believe. And I believe I have a complete right to do that, but I don't really want something like that to come down just by the, by me just taking that action. I think that's something that, if, say we were to change it, 8, 10, 12 years later, they want to change it back, I would hope that they would see that there's been a precedent and would come back before the council and do it. So that's it. That's it.
So it was initiated by a number of police officers coming to talk to you about it?
Oh, we heard it we had a meeting with them, about a month ago, about 2 weeks ago. It was brought up in that meeting. And we became aware of it, back in February. But that really wasn't an issue. Police
Yes, that was
officer.
probably the catalyst I guess that was probably the catalyst I was looking for. What made the administration look
Oh, well, they asked us.
back in February?
No, we were made aware of the change by the previous mayor, 3 or 4 administrations back. There really wasn't any, we knew about that. Police officers brought it up in their meeting.
Okay. Is there any possibility that the city should look at keeping their halftime for that time between last February to date, at whatever point it's settled, dealt with?
I don't understand the question.
Like, the 40 plus 3 straight time overtime.
Okay.
I guess the overtime was never on board until 2 weeks ago. Or would it?
No,
have
I
been
think
on board back in February?
we are still following that rule. There's a 40-hour work week, and they don't start collecting time and a half after they've worked 43 hours. So that, we can keep that in place. That's,
Okay. I'm just trying to understand for myself.
okay.
Any questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. President. Chief, I don't know if you can answer this question, but prior to when this was adjusted, was it 40 hours prior to 2000 when it was adjusted to 43?
Yes, I do believe that's correct.
Okay, and it was adjusted to 43 in 2000, and it's just kind of stayed that way until now.
That's correct.
That makes sense, and I kind of understand why it was adjusted to 43. I understand why you want to adjust it to 40. I understand why, but I don't see how this impacts the RSA discussion. I think this is a separate issue. Am I correct on that?
It's totally a separate discussion. We'll be glad to explain that if that's
I
necessary.
think I understand why. I just want to say, just want to wanted to say that out loud. I think this is trying to pair the two together. This is separate. This allows them to accrue overtime at 40 hours rather than having 3 additional straight time hours before that accrual can come into play. And that has nothing to do with the RSA. Thanks, sir.
That is unless you, used to, a city employee could earn their retirement based on the best 3 of their last 10 years. And, I guess back when the recession hit, it became a neat change. Not long after that, that's when I think they started the tier 1, tier 2 system. Is that right, Mr. Robbins?
Mr. Smith, that's an RSA provision in the law about, it's actually the highest 36 months out of the last,
Okay.
typically is the last 3 years. With overtime, that can fluctuate. That is still in effect for both tier 1 and tier 2.
But they capped it at 120% of your annual salary.
Yes, sir, one of the things that was changed by the legislature when tier 2 was created, they put in a provision that tier 1 would be capped at 120%, tier 2 was capped at 125% base earnings for the purposes of pension. Obviously, an employee can earn all the overtime that's made available to them that they're willing to work, but they're capped at 120 or 125% based on their tier to calculate their pension.
Which would allow an employee to get more use of that 20 and 25%, 40 hours or 43 hours.
As base pay or for time and a half calculation?
I would guess for base pay. That's very important.
For base pay, if the base pay is based on 43 hours, then that obviously increases the base, or the determination by the employer could be to keep salary the same, and just divide it by 43. If the effective hourly rate goes down, that would probably be a disservice to the employee. But then all of their additional hours work would go into their 20 or 25% cap. But one important caveat is whatever the base pay is based upon must also match the physical work schedule. So if we were to make any change back to the way it used to be done, so base pays for 43 hours, then they have to physically work 43 hours at a minimum every week, or as RSA informed us over the last several months, they would begin to lose retirement credit, and they would lose on average 1 month for every 12 months work. And obviously that would be catastrophic for an employee who arrived at what they thought was their retirement milestone, and they didn't have the time on the books that they thought they did, and wouldn't be able to leave at the time that they had planned.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? No. Mayor, hopefully, we'll have some good discussion between now and the next meeting. Item number 9, at our last meeting, we had a request from Mr. John Rasmussen, Gonzalez Strength and Associates, to allow for a conditional use for a pet suite resort on property located at 2311 Johns Hawkins Parkway. That request was denied by all the members. They have asked for reconsideration, and if given reconsideration, they would like to explain what they are bringing to the table. That's kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg. Not supposed to have discussion until we have a reconsideration vote. Correct, Mr. Boyd?
Need a motion to reconsider in a second. Discuss the motion to reconsider.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, chair is open for a motion. Chair is open for a motion. There is no motion provided.
I'll make a motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Just to clarify, this is not a motion on the main motion, it's just.
Now, this is a motion to
This is a
reconsider.
procedural requirement.
Having voted, Mr. Murphy, having voted with the majority, is asking for reconsideration of the vote at the last meeting. You can only hold such a consideration at the next regular meeting. You
That's correct.
can't hold it like the next meeting.
Just to be clear, this is for discussion.
Yes.
This would be to open the floor for discussion.
Is for discussion. Do we have a second? Looking for a second. There is no second. Advertise for lack of reconsideration.
Mr. President, I know it'll be way out of order.
You can speak at the end of the meeting.
Okay, this is.
Public comments. You can speak in public comments. Item 10, second reading of ordinance 18-2412. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Hoover City Board of Education and is shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase 3 of a multi-stage annexation.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2412.
Second.
A motion and a second. This is the third of 6 annexation votes. Any comments or questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Aye.
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 Aye. Next is the first reading of ordinance 18-2414. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Hoover City Board of Education as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase 4 of the multi-stage annexation. The second reading of this ordinance and consideration for adoption will be on December 3rd, 2018.
Next, we have second reading of ordinance 18-2413. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include properties located at 2253 Chapel Hill Road, 2384 Farley Road, owned by Harold Ward and Freeburg and Rhonda T. Payton respectively, shown on the maps attached to the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2413.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Minus?
Aye.
Mr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Next, is a public hearing to consider the request of the City of Hoover to amend the municipal code Appendix I zoning regarding body art establishments, pawn shops, short-term loan shops, and vape and/or tobacco stores. After the public hearing, we will have a second reading. Does anyone like to speak for or against? Yes, ma'am. Come down, please give us your name and address. There's only 1,247 people listening at home.
I am Karen Dawn Byford. My address is 2928 Monte DST Drive, Hoover. Gentlemen, during the last city elections, all of you, our current leaders, made preservation of older neighborhoods a leading issue in your campaigns. We supported the candidates who made older areas of Hoover a priority, and now it is time for us to speak out again. If we are truly going to be a government for the people, by the people, and of the people, you should use every tool provided to you within the law to give the people the strongest voice in deciding the future for our city. Over the years, the city has built around the older neighborhoods. We have become vulnerable to the forces of not only aging, but location. Monte Duro has 158 homes off Wisteria Drive that are surrounded by interstates, apartments, and businesses. A number of businesses along Warner Road and Montgomery Highway are undesirable. Vape shops, sex shops, pawn shops. Strip mall owners and convenience store owners are allowing their properties to become unsightly. We support business growth in Hoover, and it is not our intent to judge anyone, but we want Monte Duro residents and our children to have a safe and healthy environment to live in. The Monte Duro Neighborhood Association appreciates your recent efforts to address this issue, and we strongly support the passing of a moratorium on vape and pawn shops along Warner Road. Our hope is that the moratorium will continue, and that as a conditional use ordinance will be implemented. We want to be supportive of the strictest constraints while waiting for the comprehensive plan completion and implementation. We consider conditions along the northern end of Warner Road and Montgomery Highway to be possibly one of your more crucial issues to address on behalf of older neighborhoods. Please get it right and do not allow this corridor to become another Pelham Parkway or Centerpoint Parkway. With progress on the long-range plan and well-thought-out review of the zoning ordinances, you have this pivotal chance to make all areas of Hoover the very best it can be. Thanks to each of you for your dedicated service to the citizens of Hoover.
else cares to speak? Or against? Anything from the council? All right, that will conclude the public hearing. And next, we have the second reading of ordinance 18-2411, Mr. Corey.
This ordinance amends certain sections of the city's zoning code regarding the location of bodyguard establishments, pawn shops, short-term loan shops, vape and/or tobacco stores.
Mr. President, I move for approval of ordinance 18-2411 with one additional statement, statement of clarification under section 1A, under short-term loan shop, less than 90 days, at the end of installment loans.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council?
If I could just ask one question, Mr. Corley.
Yes.
That additional statement, this is the second reading, that's a statement of clarification. There are no implications for the second reading there.
No, unless the council determines that's not a material change.
So that's the purpose of that, to clarify, make it more in line with language we've used in the past.
Very good. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Dr. Middlebrooke.
Councilman Shaw, I want to commend you on a well-written ordinance here. I know you've worked very hard on it. Thank you. This is a much stronger ordinance than what we currently have in place. So for that, it does go to protect our older neighborhoods, shopping districts throughout Hoover. With that said, is this a conditional use? Or if they meet all the requirements written out in this ordinance, can they automatically set up shop?
No, it is not a conditional use, and the reason is, if I can, in a conditional use, one of the key factors and key mechanisms for a conditional use is notification of those neighborhoods. And that notification by law is a 500-foot area. We have built in protection of that 500 feet in this ordinance. So as you know, in order for one of these establishments to be in effect or in get a business license, the whole building has to be more than 500 feet away. So because no notice would ever go out to a resident on a conditional use, planning and zoning talked about this pretty extensively, if I recall. The other thing is because we added additional restrictions, with the density restrictions being all-inclusive. So in other words, originally the way it was written was you could have a vape shop and a pawn shop and something else all next to each other. Because now it's all-inclusive, anything in this class can't be 1,000 feet, with a 1,000-foot halo from another business in the same class. Planning and zoning, I think, felt that it was a lot of restrictions were already built in there to do the health, safety, and welfare, to protect health, safety, and welfare for the density factors that we've talked about in the past and some other things. And I think the feeling was because there's so much protection already built in and no notices would go out anyway to people, that it was kind of a redundant point to
I guess I understand that argument. While I do understand that no notices would go out to the residential areas, I still feel like this council has an obligation to businesses already located in their place around Hoover. I would still make an argument that these types of businesses can be detrimental to recruitment of further businesses or the businesses already located there. So I would still like to see the strongest restrictions possible in an ordinance like this, and would ask that the council consider making it conditional use, not only to protect our neighborhoods, but also protect the businesses already located. I'll see if there's any other questions, but I may come back to a motion for that.
Mr. President, reading through it, I understand the argument of not having conditional use attached, but I think the conditional use hearing has a lot of merit to it. And in that, because I don't think that we've considered anything in the past couple of years where you haven't had people, whether it was conditional use or not, call us and say, I oppose this, I'm for it, or whatever. So having that hearing, while it is more work for us, it is more work for P&Z, it really, like you said, puts puts it in the hands of the people, gives them a voice in it, and that's important. And I mean, I'm not saying that everything has to be conditional use, but anything that is controversial where we felt, and the majority of the body took the knee to put a moratorium in place, I do think that hearing, if applied to the ordinance, would be a benefit, and we give people peace of mind. Now, like you said, it's outside of the 500-foot threshold, but that doesn't mean people are gonna show up that are, you know, 600 feet, 700 feet. They're still gonna show up. And the way that Hoover's been built over the years, you have a blurred line between commercial and residential and in your older neighborhoods, and I think this is a concern. It is a concern in the older neighborhood I live in. That line continues to be blurred. And you continue to have, you'll have houses that will become commercial. Now, they're not really C2, but they'll become commercial. So if we're looking at the future, I do agree that I think that conditional use, if added back in, I mean, I understand that the parameters that would prevent it and why it was taken out, but adding that back in puts the power to the people and gives them a voice to come to the hearing and speak.
Well, Mr. President, this really came out of two things. It was not related to the moratorium. It happened to bubble up about the same time. It came up when we had something on Lorna Road that was, somebody wanted to put a pawn shop there, and their request was to rezone C1 to C2 to allow for that pawn shop. And in so doing, discussing with Mr. Martin, we discovered that these businesses were not defined in our zoning code. And so we were having to kind of interpret, and anytime we have to interpret, we run the risk of litigation and other things, where we might actually lose. And so that was the first thing, was to define this in the zoning code to make sure that it's in an appropriate place from C2 zoning, C2 place. Second thing was, because we do have, we use Montezuma's example, of that corner store there, it's a C2 zoning, that's just kind of crazy to have right next to a neighborhood like that, particularly a historic one, was to put some protections in there for proximity, because we have a lot of older sections where the zoning isn't quite, you know, it's kind of happened without it just happened over the last 50 years. And so that was the second purpose. And then the third one was, we had emails from a very concerned citizen who sent us studies that showed the densities of these. I originally said two reasons. It was actually talk about the density of mainly pawn shops. And so this was to address the density. So when you get into conditional use, state law defines conditional use as health, safety, welfare. And that's kind of what we're supposed to take into account. It's my understanding in most cases, that's what we're doing. So that's kind of outside the intended scope of this. I mean, if we want to take another look at it, and I have no intention of making a motion to moving to stop the moratorium tonight. It's a separate issue from this. So, you know, if that's something we want to revisit or just reject outright, I mean, that's certainly the will, up to the council. But I think given the intent of this conditional use, we scaled back on some things on conditional use to avoid just this constant, I don't, that's just my thing on it. I think this is strong enough to protect the neighborhoods, to accomplish what we're talking about. The map that we saw, Matt, you have that map? We don't have to, I mean, we saw where it basically prevents all of these businesses from Lorna Road. The only place in question was the very end by 31 and 65, but in discussing with Ms. Danielson, again, the whole building has to be in that zone. You can't just be in the corner of it or whatever. So if this ordinance is in place, none of these businesses will ever be on Lorna Road based on how it's currently written. So adding the conditional use, I can see why we want to put additional restrictions in concept. I just don't think practically it's required at this point based on the body of work, what has happened in the city so far when you look at what we're trying to accomplish.
Anything else? Dr. Middlebrooks, was your statement in the form of a motion?
It will be now.
Second. Well, let's get the motion first.
I motion for all the businesses contained within ordinance 18-2411 be subjected to conditional use.
Second.
Motion and a second, which opens up for comment. Mr. Corley, that would be
This would be an amendment to the ordinance.
that would be an
Motion to
amendment
amend the ordinance, which would require a new first reading.
requiring the first reading. That was my question.
chose to suspend the rules, that could be done.
But it only takes one person to vote nay to keep the rules and make suspended. So, we have a motion now. We have a motion and a second to require conditional use
For businesses that are outlawed.
for businesses that currently can't get into business. I'm just trying to make sure, under the rules. This, we can go ahead and vote this as amended, that would automatically send it back to Hoover, correct?
Correct. My understanding is that you would be voting on the motion to amend the ordinance that's on the floor.
All right.
Then you would have to vote on the amended ordinance itself at either a first reading or a second reading, or suspend the rules.
Mr. President, quick
Yes,
question.
sir.
Wouldn't that be a material change? We'll have to go back to planning and zoning?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd have to go back to planning and zoning.
So the first reading could not take place tonight. Or if you wanted to remove the motion to amend, then those parties could just vote no, and we could just start over that way. I don't think there's a 6-month requirement, is there?
No, if the motion to amend fails, you'd be voting on the main motion. If that was the question. And I do think if a material change would require first and second reading, I do not think it would be required to go back to the main. So this body can vote on the amended motion.
It would certainly shorten the time. I guess we need to make sure. All right. We have a motion to amend, to require that all of these businesses, that when they can start to do business, that they require conditional use. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Uh,
Mr. Minor?
I got a question. Is there any questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir. I guess I should have done that. That's on me.
Okay, you'll entertain questions, Mr. President. Dr. Middlebrooks?
Yes, sir.
I concur with your motion, only under the circumstance that you would withdraw the moratorium, so that we could take these one at a time. And I think Mr. Posey's point was incredibly well made, that this gives residents a voice, business owners deserve a voice as well. And so with the changing zoning, with the conditional use, I think all parties then have a voice. So I think that is a very good step forward, and a great compromise would be to remove the moratorium and allow the process to go forward. And if the body does not want to approve any one of these, we vote them down to the conditional use process.
The way I see the moratorium is and we voted on it for a year, to be in place for a year. I still say that once we take the holistic look at all of our zoning ordinances and subdivision regulations to match the master plan, lift the moratorium. But I am in favor of this ordinance. I think it's stronger than what we have. And that way, when the moratorium is lifted, we would have this in place to work upon. But at this moment, at this time, I'm
Not willing to.
lift the moratorium. Now, you can certainly make a motion to do that, if this body concedes.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please start the roll again?
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Minor?
Nay.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Nay.
Mr. Smith?
Nay. The amendment survives, and now, because it requires a new first reading, do we vote as amended?
Planning and zoning.
I just know Mr. Shaw's worked very diligently on this proposal, so I will let him make that call.
I guess I'm unclear as to how it would go back to planning and zoning since that's a pretty material change. Back to conditional use.
They will have to see it.
Well, typically, the planning commission, they're in an advisory role, they send recommendations to the council. They did send a recommendation, based on their work at a previous meeting. That's what you have before you now. It's my understanding, though, that, a textual amendment to the zoning ordinance, is a council matter. And if you guys have amended what the planning commission recommended, that's, my understanding, that's within your rights.
Even if we don't take it back, I think we need a couple weeks to gel on it. I guess my concern now is, I went into a convenience store just over the weekend, very close to a school, that had a whole jewel set up, basically. I know federal regulations are clamping down on that, but some of these things, if we outlaw them in effect through policy and put so many things out there, there's going to have to be some sort of effect there. The market is going to have to do something, whether that be an increase of some of these products or services or other things in other venues where it's not a primary business. So I'd like to, now that we've added that additional restriction, I kind of want to revisit that and see what the impact is going to be. I think we need more time to think about it. So, that's just my take. But so yeah, as far as suspending the rules, I would not be in favor of that.
Okay. Well, I've heard several voices in my ears saying that they would not be in favor of the suspension of the rules. So, that being said, let's move on to the next item. We're going to set public hearings for Monday, December 17th at 6 p.m. here in the chambers. Following requests that come from planning and zoning with a positive recommendation. First, Mr. Richard Johnson, representing SB Dev Corp, is requesting conditional use approval for a community amenity to include a pool, clubhouse, pavilion, parking lot to be built in Green Trail subdivision on lot P1 according to the preliminary plat of Fleming Farms Phase 1 revised, as revised. The owner of the property is SB Dev Corp, and the property is zoned PR1 planned single family. The second request is from Mr. Bob Matthews, requesting conditional use approval for property located at 3201 Warner Road, be used for a violin shop called Village Violins, to include sales, rentals for violins, violas, cellos, and for private music lessons. The property is owned by Alabama Central Credit Union and is zoned C1 Neighborhood Shopping District. Next is to set a public hearing for our next meeting, December 3rd at 6 o'clock, to consider Hoover City Schools' request for an ad valorem tax adjustment. I guess there we will hear from the board and/or Dr. Murphy as to y'all's thought patterns. Very good. Mr. Lyda?
Sir?
Stack of bills?
Yes, sir. I review those bills and I would move that be paid for this presented.
Second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Then we come to comments and questions. Anything from the council first?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Dr. Nobrose.
With the new library board additions, Ms. Eloise Martin's a founding member of the library board, and Ms. Sarah Rask, who served for more than 13 years on the board, will be stepping down. There's no December meeting, so November is basically their last board meeting. The library has set up a coffee, tea, snacks, cakes, and so forth for them. That will be at 3:30 on, what date is that, Amanda?
It's Tuesday, November 27th.
Tuesday, November 27th. Anybody, staff, employees, friends of the library, etc., anyone who wants to show their respect and appreciation for the time served, we invite you to the library and the theater level at 3:30.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the audience, Mr. Beavers? Name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, Mr. Mayor. My name is Charlie Beavers, 1819 Fifth Avenue North, Birmingham, 35203. What we wanted the opportunity to do here was show the council something that was different with respect to Pet Suite's proposal. When I reported to Pet Suite's the result of the hearing, I told them that I felt like the council just wasn't comfortable that that establishment could be operated there without dogs being heard by the neighbors. And to my surprise, they came back a couple of days later and said, what if we move the dogs all inside? We have no outside activity whatsoever, and we move the building further away and beef up the landscape. And I said, well, they said, is there a procedure whereby that might happen? I said, yes, under the city's ordinance, you can vote, you can still do it tonight to have a reconsideration. You then, in my judgment, hear it tonight, or you could set it for a period of time later and hear it with a hearing, give notice, however you want to do it. But what we would be proposing is a facility, it's a $3.5 million to $4 million facility that is very low intensity in use, has no outside activity, and would be covenanted with. I met with the neighbors at suggestion of this council for several hours on Sunday. Say, all right, what are your concerns about this? Here's what we're talking about doing. And they had they had four. One was, well, if you say no outdoor, the council could change that later. Some other councils, I said, we'll give you a covenant, give you a private covenant running with the land. That could be rock solid. They said, what about having another fence? They got a fence along their back property line. Said, would you all put another fence with Pet Suites? Put another fence there. Solid fence, 500 feet of solid wood fencing. Pet Suite says, yes, we'll do that. Then they said, we want to know about blasting and whatnot. And I said, really, we don't know for sure, but anything that goes there would require blasting, no matter what it is. So it's kind of a non-issue on this. And then the fourth thing was, and they came up with this yesterday, an email to me yesterday evening or this morning. I got with Pet Suites on this. Would they be agreeable to putting in additional soundproofing materials in the building to such a level that for sure you wouldn't hear anything? And if we were to show you these drawings and all we have, the new site plan, the closest backyard is over like 75 feet from the closest part of the building. Next closest is like 113 feet. That's to the property line. Some of the houses are over 300 feet away. Others, 200 feet away. It's way far away. Lots of landscaping, fencing, the sound barriers that they would add. You won't hear the dogs. Even with dogs outside at the Roswell site, when you get on the other side of the building, the decibel levels were like at the level of speaking, which was clearly in a brick building with beefed up insulation, not escape the building. At night, when all the dogs are inside the building, there was no sound detected from any dogs at Roswell, period. So we're comfortable that what we can present to this city, to this neighborhood, is a resolution to a very difficult piece of property, which is not a pleasant thing for them now. They're wide open to the road. And they hear you go up there, you hear all kind of noise, you can see the cars going back and forth, you can see everything. With this landscaping, with this building buried like it is, it would buffer the entire neighborhood. And this would be a use that would generate no adverse effects to the adjoining property with these added conditions. So what we are asking this council to do is vote to reconsider the matter, which would then get it back before you, and then you could consider whether you want to do it or not, and based on what conditions you would want to do it. It seems like a win-win for this neighborhood and for this property owner who has some rights, and for the city to get it. It's been a difficult piece of property developed in a very favorable kind of way. And that's what we would be asking you to do, is vote to reconsider it. That doesn't mean you approve it. Set it, if you like, for 2 weeks, a month out, however you want to do it. and let us come in with the neighbors, there were some here, and present everything, and we think present to you something that would be very advantageous. Our folks have spent about 6 months on this, and then the triple figures in architects and engineers, and lawyers, and everything else trying to get this done. It just seems like we came up with something surprising that would be very, very good, that you would like, and that we could satisfy the neighborhood. And we just like that opportunity.
Mr. Beavers, I had somebody asking me a parliamentary question, so I didn't pick up. You had, in the conversation you and I had tonight, you'd also mentioned, and I can't remember if you brought it up tonight, about relocating the building closer to 150.
Yes,
You did? Okay, just want to make sure.
yes, sir. And then we have drawings that show that.
Okay. One thing that I'm unsure of, Mr. Corley, can you call for reconsideration and not have the reconsideration vote during the meeting it's supposed to be reconsidered?
No, sir, if I understand your question correctly, our ordinance and Robert's rules provides that a motion to reconsider must occur, a vote on a motion to reconsider must occur at the meeting when the original vote took place or the next subsequent meeting.
That was my understanding.
If there's not a reconsideration at the meeting in which the vote took place or the next subsequent meeting, then our ordinance provides that that request can come back for a period of 6 months.
Okay.
And what we thought was, the way I read it, Philip may have a different view of it, is that you could vote to reconsider it, which would put it back on the table. That vote has to happen tonight, or it's lost. And then, on whatever we present, you could do that at another time if you want to. That's my judgment about it.
It's my understanding about Robert's rules and about 30 years of watching Montgomery, that the vote has to occur on the same date that the reconsideration is requested. Now, we have not gavelled out yet.
Yes, sir.
So if any member wanted to make a motion to reconsider, that's up to the membership. That's already been up and voted for the lack of a second. But if anybody wants to reconsider reconsidering, or reconsider the reconsider of reconsidering, we have not gavelled out. Sorry, sir.
And I just can't see what the negative is. I'd love to take something back to my client as to why this is unacceptable, or not worth a look. You're not obligated.
I can't speak to it myself.
I know you can't.
Mr. Smith, just one quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind. Is, were the neighbors prepared to, hear, the presentation? I mean, do we know that they're feeling their tone? I mean, so, so we won't waste time. At the end of the day, what feedback did you get from the residents?
I got feedback that that would be acceptable if they could be sure that that these things they were concerned about would be, this would be in play, which we're willing to do. Now, I had a meeting with three different neighbors at one house. Now, I walked across the street and met briefly with another neighbor, explained it to him. That one was, non-committal. I just explained it to him, and he thanked me. And then I went to another neighbor who seemed to find it appropriate. He asked that we do something a little different on his fencing, and we were willing to do that. But I hesitate to say, that they were, what they were going to say. I think they wanted to hear the presentation, to hear the things we'd come up with, and that is what I was to present for all of them. We just wanted an opportunity to present it. And then we'd gotten a second, then we could have talked about it, and you could have heard from the neighbors and all that, but here we are.
Ms. Corley, I think it's not non-committal, but I do think that there's been a lot of changes to this. Why? Is there any way to reconsider and send it right back to planning and zoning, considering the changes that have been made? I mean, I don't know that with all the changes that have been made, that this is something that doesn't need another look by planning and zoning. You're talking about different material being used, sound material being used, different fencing, and, you know, with the physical building is moved.
Right, so if I understand your question correctly, you could reconsider it and send it back to planning and zoning. I believe you could also reconsider it and hear a presentation, vote on it yourselves at a later date. The motion to reconsider itself is a procedural matter. It is specific in the ordinance to meeting in which the vote occurs or the next subsequent meeting, which is this meeting. So in order to take it back up, somebody who voted with the majority at the previous vote would have to make a motion to reconsider. And if this body voted to reconsider, you could either vote on a new plan at this time, or you could table it or continue it to a future meeting, and then vote on the substantive presentation.
And the difference for him would be 6 weeks, right?
6 months.
6 months, okay, so quite a bit.
If we don't do this, we have to wait 6 months. And
Mr. President, if I could just comment.
Yes.
I hesitate to jump into this. But I've been nothing but complimentary, Mr. Beavers, about how you and your client have been, the whole planning. This has been a long process. 6 months is correct. I'm very concerned about the precedent we're setting here, where we go the full length, we vote on something, and then we have meetings with the neighborhoods. Then we come up with a plan that's acceptable. You know, I'm not an expert in football, but you get 4 downs. Ms. Murphy, that's correct, right? Four downs.
I believe so, unless Alabama, they can score 3 now.
Yeah, well, I'm an Auburn fan, so
Well, y'all need
we
7.
need probably 7 or 8, I think, in some games. But you can have an awesome play dialed up on the 5th down, but that's the process we have. I'm very concerned about the integrity of the process, and the president will be setting if we can vote things no, and then everybody goes out to the neighborhoods and we figure out what it is, and then we're revoting things. I think we have a process, it's very well defined. Planning and zoning has had multiple meetings, and we went back and forth multiple times. Throughout this whole process, the sound was repeatedly indicated as the key indicator, and there was lots of great responses on the snow and all these other things, and I have no problem with all these other things. But it just, I'm concerned about our precedent if we as a body start reconsidering motions, reconsidering their votes, and then that's seen as well. That's the first no, we can still get it there before the next thing. I wish this plan had been what we hashed out in planning and zoning. I wish that's what we handled in the neighborhood and come up with and present to the council. I'm just very concerned about like I said, the integrity of the process and the precedent we'll be setting if we do this. I hate it because.
Let me, if I can, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Martin, I have a question for you on the planning and zoning side. It would require 6 months if they brought it back as originally presented, correct? So if they started next month with planning and zoning, they could take the new plan and work it back through the system. And it wouldn't take 6 months before they could bring it out.
If there was a substantial enough change, that, I, just as an administrator, helping the planning commission, I would advise that, there's been enough change to go ahead and start the process there. And not have the.
Mr. Beavers, does that help?
Well, that, it's certainly better than 6 months. And if I may, just speak to the point Councilman Shaw was making, I understand that. But this wouldn't be going outside the rules. I mean, this is not a 4-down
No.
football game. The rules do provide for this, you know, they do. And it's very unusual.
It also falls back to voting members on how they consider dealing with things.
Yeah, I understand.
There's no written rule, but there can be an unwritten rule. And we may have done that tonight. We may have done it before tonight. I would urge your client to maybe start the process as soon as possible. Hopefully it could move right on through, and who knows, maybe you'll get lucky and somebody will suspend the rules.
What, do we have to suspend the rules if we do it that way? Or we just starting over with it?
If we have a first reading and then have a second.
Oh, I
reading,
see what you're saying, yes. Yes, so we can hear it on the first reading. And
Can I make a quick point to kind of,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman? Just one statement. back to Mr. Shaw's point, I think the council did we know somewhat of the modifications being heard tonight? All of us know?
They couldn't have been heard unless the,
Right, okay,
well,
so,
was it not discussed, it was lightly discussed in work
yeah,
session.
I presented more.
So I said it for a reason. Look, I like to be straightforward, and I would hate it for you guys to spend more time and more billable hours to things, but just me looking at, if you didn't get a second motion, and we had a work session, and we somewhat knew what it was gonna entail, I don't think it's meaningful. I can't tell you what to do, but, the odds are not looking good.
We wouldn't want to waste our time.
Yeah, so I'll just make that statement.
I'm hearing, and maybe I'm hearing wrong, that the procedural issue is a problem, but that if we had this from the beginning, it might have been different. And so that I'm hearing that there may be something favorable if we come in with this lockdown where you know there's no sound, where all these things that we talked about with the changes are implemented and locked in. That would be a different plan, and it might get a different response from this council if we started over with planning and zoning. And it's kind of a tricky thing, I mean, you can't tell me what you would do, but I think our folks have got so much in it, they would be willing to invest to go back through a planning commission hearing and then back before this council, unless I'm just told, by a number, obviously forget it, we just don't want it for whatever reason. I think we can bring you something that you like.
Talking about coming back through the system again?
Because it sounds to me like the vote to reconsider and is not something y'all are interested in doing, but that if we say that we can refile without having to wait 6 months, go to planning commission and then back to this council, that might be something that would be looked upon more favorably. If I'm hearing it right.
Unless Mr. Murphy was to make another motion, and was able to find a second. Like you said, probably don't like it.
So we would have to refile, but in my hearing, the city's position is that we could with this change in the development plan. That's, that we wouldn't have to wait 6 months.
Change, it would not, 6
Yeah.
month timeframe would.
Yeah. We do have some variances that we've gotten, those limited in time, so we're good with those. Some cities, you have to start within a certain time before you lose your variances. Unless there's a miraculous turnaround on the procedure that I'm not anticipating right now, it sounds like my option for this client is to refile with this new plan and come back to you. But if any of y'all feel so inclined and you want to call me and tell me don't waste my time, because there's no way I'm voting for this, I'd be happy to have a phone call. Otherwise, I'm gonna recommend to the client that we're coming back through, that they come back through.
Certainly, we can't consider something that isn't before us.
That's right.
Calling you and saying, no way in the world would I vote for this.
I guess I'm assuming you've heard enough of it to understand it, but maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe
Mr.
not.
President.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Point of clarification. I believe the applicant has to pull his permit within 6 months of issuance of his variance.
So we would need to go back and get the variance.
Well, I think if
Then-
you can get your permit in that timeframe. you
Yeah,
just
we'll
have
have to look at that date.
I don't think Mr. White.
The process could work quicker than that.
Sir,
The process could work. quicker.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to be sure
Yeah.
that we're clear.
Yeah.
That it is not completely open-ended, that he has to have his permit within 6 months.
All right.
Very good.
I think I understand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else from the audience? Mr. Patterson?
My name is Jody Patterson, and a Hoover resident for almost 59 years. Before you on December 3rd, consider Hoover Schools ad valorem tax. Has anyone asked the question or come up, how much would this vote cost the citizens, I guess citizens of Jefferson County, who pays for this? Does the city pay for
The
it?
city of Hoover would pay for it, and it's my recollection to be right at about $100,000.
100,000. I have a few comments. When would we vote? How soon would this come up for vote?
We would have to go, well, we'd have to go before the legislature, and they'd have to grant the vote. And I'm not sure how many days after the governor was to sign the bill, the city would have to hold it notice. So there's statutes that apply. Sir?
I'll be happy to look at that.
Okay, we'll get you that.
Have an answer maybe next meeting?
Oh, well, yeah, before then.
I've got just a few words. Several meetings ago, told each of you how much I appreciated your questions and the way you debate and the overall attitude of our council meetings as being very positive. It's almost unbelievable if I can call anyone in this city, and I truly feel I get honest, truthful, and complete information about anything, anytime. Not so with my school board meeting experiences. Totally opposite. I don't get any questions answered. And I would say the information director is incredible at giving me no information at all. Why do I mention this? I think there are many questions that if you had truthful answers, you'd know our school system is in big trouble. I think we're reaping what we've sown over a long period of time. The superintendent and school board members want you to support another tax increase. In our property tax millage this time. They know a vote by the residents is required. So why not let everybody vote? It costs $100,000, we know now. Because it's your job to do what's best for all of Hoover residents. If this is allowed to come up as a vote, you will be penalizing those of us who are Hoover residents and live in Jefferson County. Shelby County residents, they already see two major tax breaks. 1% sales tax rate for their county. We pay 2% here in Jefferson. And second, Shelby County homeowners currently pay 68 mills. Ours in Jefferson County would be increased to 75 mills, the maximum allowed by state law. This increase, I think, is unreasonable and an unfair tax on those of us in Jefferson County. I've said it before. I don't think more money is the answer for our schools. Schools have been yelling more money, more money, more money since I was at Green Valley Elementary in 1965. If you believe that more money will solve these problems, I think you're wrong. If you or anyone else believes more money is the answer, I say, get out your checkbook and send them more money. Don't tax me and my mom and my sister, my dad's lot. don't tax us anymore. Not for this. For me and my family, no. And I'm gonna fight it harder than I've fought anything in my life. Thank you.
Schultz.
My name's Robin Schultz. I live at 348 Albemarle Drive. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but Mr. Patterson I wanted to rebut some of the items that he said. I've attended all but 12 school board meetings since 2007, many more than Mr. Patterson has. Whenever I have a question for any of the board members, I can go to the board members, I can get a response. One of the issues that Mr. Patterson has had in the past is his method. But regarding this particular item, the millage item, we, for the last 7-8 years, have lived in a city where one of our schools is overpopulated. And one of the issues that has come up over and over and over again is a third high school. Third high schools aren't cheap. This goes back to 1994, when a large area of land was annexed, which is now coming to fruition and being built. The school board's money issues began in the administration of 2000, when that particular council and mayor totally cut funding that the schools were getting. Mr. Patterson was a member of that council. Mr. Patterson does not like giving the schools money. We leave it up to the people vote. In this particular case, this council is allowing the people to vote. That's all this council is being asked to do. And I think you will find that the majority of the people are going to vote for this tax increase, just for the schools and only for the schools, overwhelmingly. Thank you very much.
Of course, the discussion of the next meeting is strictly a public hearing. There's not even a resolution that would be voted on even that night. So, anything else from the audience? Anything else from the council? Mr. Mack?
We're gonna double check this, but, I believe as far as variances go, when the Board of Zoning Adjustment grants those, they run with the land. There is not a expiration date for those. Did not see it in our zoning ordinance. We'll double check. But
They already been before BZA?
that's correct. Conditional use has a 6-month time restraint.
What was the variance they got?
Well, there were a couple of provisions that were approved under the zoning ordinance for that piece of property, a couple of extra conditions, and they were seeking some variance to those.
Do you know what those were? Or something you can send us?
Sure, I'll be glad to send that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Mr. Singer, nothing tonight, it's last chance for Thanksgiving. Mr. Green is, he doesn't want to leave.
Mrs. Green does, I think.
Well, we don't have anything else. Everybody have a blessed Thanksgiving, and we will see y'all in a few weeks. We're adjourned.